You are listening to the Food for Thought podcast, where each episode is presented as an invitation for dialogue and self-reflection. I am your host, the real MaCoya. Thanks for tuning in. Bon appetit. Hey, what's up, everyone? On today's menu, we're going to be talking about what's on your plate. Are you booked and busy, or are you booked and busted? Now, booked and busy is typically a term that we use when we are thriving in our businesses or our endeavors. We just have a lot going on that we really don't have a lot of time for play. Don't have a lot of time to idle, no time to waste, because time is money. Now, that's not bad, right? I mean, most people aspire to be booked and busy. They want to have the clients. They want their businesses to prosper. They want to be able to see the fruits of their labor. Now, what does booked and busted mean? Now, booked and busted is, for me, when someone is stressed, overwhelmed, and burned out, and it's not because they're being booked and busy. It's because they have so much on their plates that it's almost impossible to thrive and be okay. Now, what do I mean by that? We are going to have seasons where we're going to be busy, where we're going to have a lot on our plates. We're going to have a lot to juggle. That's understandable and that's realistic. But the thing is that when we become title hoarders, when we want to have something to fill in our bios with, we will begin to put on so much that it's like, how can you really expect to thrive and be okay? Because our personal, mental, and spiritual well-being have to be a priority. And the thing is, in a booked and busy society, that does not leave much room for those things. Because when you give, when do you have time to refuel and replenish? That is the question. Are you so booked and busy that you are leading yourself down a path towards stress, anxiety, and overwhelm? You know, that's not what God desires for us. Because, you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be an entrepreneur and having a lot of things going on. But at the same time, we have to put our well-being first. And if that means that we have to say no or let some things go, are we willing to do that? Are we willing to be content with the first serving on our plate before we start trying to pile on for some more sweet potatoes and greens? You know, can we finish what's on our plate before we pile on more? Now, finishing what's on our plate to me is very important, because even in myself, I've had to do a pruning by choice. And that means that I had to let go of some things that I had created in my mind, some expectations from years ago of what I was expecting God to do in my life. Because the thing is a lot of times, y'all, we get entitled and we get, basically caught up in our giftings to the point to where we confine ourselves. Like, we really put God in a box. And we feel that because we're gifted in certain areas that God can only move or use those giftings. And the thing is, every gift does not have to be monetized. Every gift does not have to be used every season of your life. Just be obedient to the current assignment that God has called you to. If you're working a job and you're only using one of your gifts, just use one of your gifts. Don't try to go and do a business where you're able to use that gift. And then you got another business where you're able to use the other gift. And then you want to be able to use the other gift at church. And now you got the other gift, you want to use that in your household. It's like, can you just finish what's on your plate? This is a question that we have to ask ourselves, because we get caught up in hearing, oh, yes, you can have it all. You can do it all. But the reality is you can't. Even God couldn't do it all, y'all. He took a day to rest. So if we feel obligated to use everything that God has given us, and God has not called us to do that, then that's when we are putting ourselves in the position of God. Because who are we to tell God how to mold us? That we are the clay, He's the potter. And a lot of times we find ourselves trying to tell the potter how to mold the clay. And we think that because we're so gifted in certain areas of our lives, that God should be using us the most in that particular area. I've struggled so much with trying to figure out what I needed to do and pursue as my career, because I was just so stuck on God using me in the areas of my giftings. And that led me to pretty much keep myself stuck. And I've just experienced so much freedom with being able to let that go. let go of my plan and my expectations and allow God to use me the way that he sees fit. And if that means that he's only using partial or total or only a fourth of the things that he's placed in me, guess what? He has the right to do that because he created me. It's just like if I buy a vase at Home Goods. The vase can't tell me how it wants to be used. The vase can't tell me, well, I was really supposed to be created to sit on a table, but you have me on a shelf and I really wasn't supposed to be on a shelf. They can't tell me how to use it because I bought it. It's mine. I have authority and control over it. So guess what? I dictate how it's used. Doesn't matter what the person that created it wanted it to be used for. It's all about the person that has authority and control over it now. Just like when they tell people when you give a gift to somebody, you can't tell them how to use it. Like this episode of MaCoya where Frank gave Miles some comic books and then Miles ended up turning around and selling it. And it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, Frank gave that to Miles as a token. It was like, hey, you're supposed to appreciate these. But Frank appreciated them in a certain way. Miles appreciated in a certain way. So once you've given that gift away, you can no longer tell the person how to use it. And that's the thing, like, God has gifted us, but he still has authority over our lives. He has not given us freely to ourselves. We have free will, but guess what? We give that free will right back when we give our lives to the Lord. And so at that point, we've surrendered authority over our own lives, which means God, he created us. He dictates how he wants to use us in our lives. And that's hard for us because we like to be able to, lean on our own understanding and get the fulfillment based on what we believe. Like, God, you gifted me to sing better than Beyonce. I surely should be out here in the world sharing my gifts. But God just wants you to share that gift with your church or sing to your little baby that you've just given birth to. And you have to be content with that. And that's the thing. Like, we don't want to be content with how God wants to use us. And that's when we begin to pile more onto our plates because we begin to close doors that God has not closed. David was anointed as king, but he still had to go and tend those sheep. He couldn't just be like, okay, sheep, bye-bye now. I'm going to leave y'all to fend for yourselves. He had to be obedient to the current assignment until God closed that door. And the thing is that once God reveals certain things to us, we begin to start making moves. Like, oh, God told me I was going to do this. Okay, well, let me go ahead and start working on that. But God has not closed the door that you are currently in. So you don't take it upon yourself to close this door and say, well, I'm going to be this anyways. God going to take me over here anyways. So I need to just go ahead and let this go. No, God guides us. He orders our steps. He opens and closes the doors in our lives. So will we be the clay and let God be God? Will we finish and focus on what's on our plate right now before we go and pile on more? Can we be led by the Lord in all the things that we pursue? So that way we can thrive because we are going to be booked and busy and we are going to experience moments of stress and anxiety and burnout. But the thing is God's grace is sufficient to what he's called us to. Don't think that David wasn't scared to fight off those lions, tigers, and bears, but God's grace was sufficient. So will we be content and obedient to our current assignments and allow God to lead us towards the next thing? That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Food for Thought. Please leave your comments below and be sure to subscribe.